Of course. Your script with a story video. No fluff, no rep, a minimum of written in a direct, high-quality, to-the-point style, ideal for a faceless, infidelity-ated ideas. It started with a message. Nothing dramatic. Just, you should come upstairs before you leave. I stared at it for a moment longer than necessary. Liam always knew how to pick the right tone. Casual, inviting, just enough mystery. I told myself it was harmless. Like every other conversation we'd had over the past 6 months. Aaron was already asleep at home. He usually was by 9:30, headphones on, a documentary playing in the background. We hadn't kissed in weeks. I couldn't remember the last time he touched me without it feeling routine. Marriage had become predictable. Safe.
Stale.
Liam wasn't safe. He was all glances and timing. He remembered how I took my coffee, complimented the small things, my laugh, the way I organized my desk, the shape of my handwriting. That sort of thing sinks in deeper when you've gone unnoticed for too long. I lingered in the hallway after the company happy hour ended. Most people had gone. I could hear low music upstairs, probably his speaker. I almost turned around twice. But I didn't. When I knocked softly, he opened the door with that same half-smile. "You made it," he said, as if I'd been expected all along. There was a confidence in him that made everything feel already decided. He didn't mention anyone else. That's the part one keeps circling back to. He didn't lie. He just didn't say. I stepped in. He offered a drink. I said no. He poured one anyway and handed it to me. I didn't protest. We talked for a while, nothing heavy. Work, music, stupid memes from earlier in the week. I noticed he didn't sit across from me. He stood behind the arm of the couch, close but not too close. Like he knew the distance just well enough to be intentional. At some point, I asked if anyone else was coming. He said, "They're already here." He said it like it was nothing, like it made sense. Then I noticed the door slightly ajar down the hall, voices inside. Soft, laughing, indistinct. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. Instead, I followed him, not out of trust but curiosity. Like I needed something to happen, anything to shake me awake. When I saw them, Jade from accounting and Theo, one of the project managers, it didn't register at first. They were seated casually, wine glasses in hand. Comfortable. Like this wasn't their first time. They looked up and smiled at me like I was late to something I'd agreed to but forgotten. There was no awkwardness. No shock. Just space for me to make a choice. I stood in the doorway, pulse loud in my ears, and for a second, I thought about leaving. I imagined going home, brushing my teeth, sliding into bed beside Aaron like none of it happened. But I didn't. I walked in. He asked me to come upstairs. What he didn't say was that 2 others would be there too. That part is true. Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Of course. Your script, keeping the same tone. Direct, no words, tightly focused on the act and emotional betrayal. No one said anything when I sat down. Jade poured me a drink without asking. Theo leaned back like he'd already made peace with the night's outcome. There wasn't a script, but everyone knew their part. Except me. The silence wasn't heavy. It was charged. Liam didn't sit beside me. He stood behind me again, one hand brushing my shoulder. The first contact. It felt deliberate, meant to tip the balance. I didn't pull away. Jade asked if I was nervous. Her voice was soft, not mocking. I said no. I was lying, but I wanted to believe I wasn't. Maybe if I said it out loud, it'd feel true. Theo raised his glass like we were toasting to something. What, I don't know. Maybe detachment. Maybe the lie we were all pretending didn't matter. I drank anyway. Not because I needed courage, but because I wanted an excuse to stop thinking. Liam sat beside me. I felt his knee touch mine. Barely there. My heart started to race. I kept looking down at my hands. They weren't shaking, but they didn't feel like mine. Jade moved first. She reached for my arm, tracing it with her fingers. It should have startled me. It didn't. Her touch was slow, exploratory. She leaned in and whispered something I didn't fully catch. Maybe she said I was beautiful. Maybe she didn't say anything at all. It didn't matter. Her mouth brushed my neck like it wasn't a question. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I let it happen. Let the air shift around me like I was just part of the current. Liam's hand slid across my thigh. I remember thinking how practiced it was, how confident. He'd done this before. I wasn't special. That should have broken the moment. Instead, it made it easier. I didn't have to carry the weight of being unique. I could just be another choice. Theo barely touched me. He wasn't focused on me, not really. He was watching Jade, watching Liam, like he was feeding off the energy more than the contact. That made it less personal, somehow. Easier to detach from. There were flashes. Someone's breath against my stomach. Someone else whispering my name like they already owned it.
Skin.
Pressure.
Heat.
Not once did anyone ask, "Are you sure?" They didn't need to. I stayed. That was my answer. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel desired. I felt erased. Like I was watching someone else move my body. Someone braver. Someone emptier. When it was over, I sat on the edge of the bed, silent. No one looked ashamed. No one looked proud either. It was like finishing a meal. Gratified, not satisfied. I went to the bathroom. Locked the door. Stared at myself in the mirror. Makeup smudged. Hair a mess. Lips swollen. I looked like someone I didn't recognize. But the worst part was, I liked how unfamiliar I looked. I splashed water on my face, wiped it dry, and stared a second longer before leaving. I didn't feel guilt yet. That would come tight, emotionally focused, without repeating any prior content or drifting from the narrative. The next morning felt normal. That was the strangest part. I woke up in my own bed, the sheets cold on one side. Aaron was already downstairs. I could hear the kettle, the same radio station playing like always. Nothing about the house had changed, only I had. I stared at the ceiling longer than usual. My body ached in places I didn't expect. I didn't feel regret. Not fully. Just this slow, creeping awareness that something had shifted and couldn't be undone. I got dressed carefully. Everything felt too tight or too exposed. I avoided the mirror. I didn't want to see her again. The version of me from last night. When I walked into the kitchen, Aaron looked up, offered a smile. "Sleep okay?" I said yeah. I didn't ask him anything. Didn't want the conversation. He handed me coffee like he always did. It tasted bitter.
He talked about work.
A meeting. A late invoice. I nodded, added a few words. He didn't notice I wasn't really there. Maybe that's what hurt the most. That he couldn't tell the difference. I checked my phone under the table. A message from Liam. Last night was something else.
I didn't respond.
I didn't delete it either. At work, I avoided eye contact. Jade walked past me in the hallway, subtle smile on her lips. Theo didn't even look. Liam acted normal, like nothing had happened. Like I was supposed to carry on without missing a step. Every room felt louder. Every silence felt loaded. I kept waiting for someone to say something. No one did. The world didn't fall apart. No thunder, no judgment. Just me and my thoughts, scraping against each other. I told myself it was just once.
Just a moment.
But I couldn't stop replaying it. The look in Jade's eyes. Liam's hand on my skin. How easy it was to say nothing and let everything happen. That night, Aaron reached for me in bed. It wasn't like him. It wasn't even physical. He just rested his hand on my waist. A small gesture.
Soft.
Familiar. I flinched. He didn't pull away immediately. Just asked, "You okay?" I said I was tired. He didn't push. He never did. He turned away. And I stared at his back, wondering what it would feel like if he knew. If I said it out loud. The guilt didn't come like a wave. It came in fragments. In the way I avoided his eyes. In the way I said goodnight too quickly. In how I held my breath when he brushed against me in the hallway. I kept telling myself I could undo it by pretending it didn't happen. But every second I stayed silent, I knew I was choosing distance. Aaron and I had become strangers long before last night. But now it was irreversible. I'd made sure of that. The story with clarity, emotion, and precision, no repetition, minimum 500 words, direct and unflinching. 2 weeks passed. The silence between Aaron and me got thicker. We spoke when we had to: grocery lists, schedules, the weather. Everything else lived in the space between us. I didn't bring it up. Neither did he. But I saw it in his eyes. He knew something had shifted. He just didn't know what. I couldn't sleep. Nights became the hardest. That was when my mind replayed things I didn't ask for. The sound of Jade's laugh. The way Liam said my name. The stillness after. I would lie awake, my body cold, wondering who I had become. I wrote it down once. All of it. Every detail. For pages. Folded them, tucked them into an envelope, and left it in my drawer. I imagined handing it to Aaron, letting him read it, watching everything fall apart. I never gave it to him. I tore it up the next day and flushed the pieces. Cowardice disguised as control. Liam messaged again. Nothing provocative. Just thinking about you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I didn't respond. He didn't follow up. That was the game. We both knew the rules. One afternoon, I saw him by the parking lot. He caught my eye, smiled like we shared some private joke.
I didn't smile back.
He walked toward me, casual, hands in his pockets. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. "Fine." That's all I gave him. He paused, maybe expecting more. Then he nodded once and kept walking. That night, I stood in the shower for nearly an hour. Let the water scald my skin like it might wash away what happened. It didn't. I stepped out and caught my reflection. I didn't recognize my own expression. Not angry. Not sad. Just blank. Like the weight had pressed everything else out of me. Aaron tried again. Asked if I wanted to take a weekend trip. Just us. I said I was too busy.
He didn't argue.
He just nodded. His silence wasn't passive anymore. It was defensive. He knew something was gone, and he was too tired to chase it. I wondered if it would have been different if I'd told him right away. If honesty could have saved what routine had already worn down. But I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted distance. What I did wasn't about desire, it was about disappearing. Some people cheat for excitement, some for revenge. I did it because I was tired of feeling invisible. And for a few hours, I wasn't. I was wanted, not loved, not respected, just wanted. That was enough to make me forget myself. Now every room feels colder. Every silence more deliberate. I'm not sure what happens next. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. He asked me to come upstairs. He didn't lie. But he didn't tell the whole truth either. And now, I live in the space between the two.